Hello, everyone. It's Deborah Hamilton, and I hope some of you are here. I know today is a different day, and I'm going to turn on my video. Hi, how are you? Sorry about being a little bit late, but unfortunately, my large computer has decided it is not going to work for me today. So I'm going to use my phone, which works perfectly for me today. How are you all doing? You are part of the MAAP Blueprint, and this is the 4th session. So we are addressing the P in the MAAP plan, navigating the journey your pet takes when you can't care for it. Whether you've just begun or you're in the middle or you're with us on the P, that's okay because I review everything. We're going to speak for an hour, and hopefully if someone has a question, they will put it in the chat box, and I will figure out how to see that on my cell phone, but not to worry. I am a magician. I can work out almost everything as far as this is concerned. I'm really good at this, so I'm just going to take you along for the ride. Again, this is Deborah Hamilton, Hamilton Law Mediation, and we have this wonderful group who has taken charge of the care of their pets, long-term, short-term. And isn't that being played out in spades in recent weeks as we see the weather and, fires and floods inundating parts of our country? I actually was posting a great deal on Facebook and LinkedIn about how to make sure you have close by and far away appointed people to take care of your pets. Because quite frankly, if you had somebody next door taking care of your pets and a fire arrives, a flood arrives, or a hurricane arrives, they're not going to be helpful to you because they are going to be in the same boat you're in. And I felt so good this week because several of my clients from past Blueprint programs actually lived in the affected areas of fire, flood, hurricane, and called me and said, Deborah, we just took our package. We knew where we were going. We called the person we had appointed. We knew what we had to take for our pets because we had made this plan. We had this checklist. And it just was phenomenal to hear from people, boots on the ground, so to speak, for the MAAP plan, saying, it works. Let's do it. So do me a favor. Don't give up now. Work through the entire program. We have one more week. We have the 5th week, which actually stands for S. My girlfriend Norva said I absolutely had to schedule another event for us, another Blueprint session, because not only is it about us talking now, it's about us talking next year or maybe in 6 months. You'll always have the opportunity to log in. Once you're a MAAP person, you're always a MAAP person, so you can always just log in, update, learn new things, just especially the people who are coming in 2017, because we are going to make you our golden Blueprint people. You've chosen to do this, and after all of the things that have occurred, you are so thrilled you have, and we want to honor that you were some of the first to make the step to create a plan for the care of your pets. So without further ado, let's start with a review of the MAAP plan for those of you who are new. So if you're starting, the M stands for making a plan, and it might seem intuitive that, this is my plan, but you need to write it down. I know that most of us think our family, our children, our husband, our wife, our parents are going to take our pets and take good care of our pets. And you know what? They just might. However, a friend of mine, Yvonne DeVita, said to me after listening to me speak, I know my daughter's going to take my pets, but wouldn't it be great if she couldn't, that I released her from the guilt? And that's part of why I do this. It's not about making sure that one person is in place who's going to take care of your pets. They might be great. But if for some reason they can't, wouldn't it be great if you provided them with the opportunity to call someone else to take care of these pets? It's amazing. It's an amazing piece of information that you give them above and beyond the care of your pets. It's the plan you have made that will enable them to follow through in taking care of your pets the way you wanted to take care of your pets, either short-term, long-term. So you have to make a plan. There's a whole video on that. There's templates on that. And I want to thank some of our participants for saying we want more. So I've created some more. I've added some more. I've attached the things I said I was going to attach. So go back and review and make sure you've picked up on everything that is occurring with this information. Okay, good. So I am here. Anyway, we are just thinking about whether or not you have made the plan. We're starting with the M, and then we're going to the A, which can either mean address. Somebody has to mute because we hear you now. Address the pets or appoint the caregivers. That's why there are 2 A's in MAAP. So if you want to do the first piece, which I always think you should, because understanding what your pet's needs are so much more important than thinking about who's going to take care of them first. So understand the needs of your pets, and then that's address the needs of the pet, that's the A, and then appoint the caregivers for each and every pet. They may be the same, they may be different. If you have 1 pet, then you have a certain number of people. If you have more than 1 pet, you might have upwards of 5 or 10 people being the caregivers for your pets. But today, as I said, we're handling the P, which everybody says to me, but Deborah, why do you have a P? Because if you don't publish this wonderful plan you've put together, it is as if you've done nothing. And you can't just publish it with your family members. You need to publish it with each and every person you've appointed as your caregiver, because they need to know the redundancy you've put in so that they can get support if they can't take care of the pet, long-term, short-term. They can't take care of the pet for a weekend. Well, then I know that, well, say me, I know Deborah appointed Susie as the main caregiver, but Susie's going to go on vacation. Now Susie knows that Mary Beth is someone who can take care of the pets while she's on vacation. This is something that will work so well for you. So you have to publish it with all the caregivers. And when you publish it, you also need to give a copy to your attorney who's doing your trust and estate work, because we talk about making a pet trust in other webinars that I do. You might want to hop on to those as well because it really is important. Or you want to be able to give it to your veterinarian. Did you know that your veterinarian needs to have a relationship with you in order to treat your pet? There has to be a doctor-patient relationship. And if you don't list the people who are in your MAAP plan at your vet's office, he or she would be legitimate in not allowing them to bring the pet in to be treated, or not treating the pet at their direction without your affirmation that they're allowed to do that. So part of the publishing is that you need to go to your veterinarian and drop off names and addresses and telephone numbers of the people who are able to care for your pet in your stead. There are templates you're going to receive through this blueprint program that make it really easy for you to do that. And when your vet asks you, what the heck are you doing? Say, well, you know, I'm pre-planning for the care of my pets, and I'm putting you in a really good position that, in fact, if one of these people comes with my dog, you can take care of it and know that I'm going to pay you, or someone's going to pay you for the care that you've given this dog. Because ultimately, if the person isn't on the list of caregivers for that pet, you don't have to pay for that service. And although vets are likely going to make sure that they take care of your pet, they should really, in good business practices, assure that the person who's asking for the care of the pet is the person authorized by the owner to take care of the pet. So now, how do you publish? Well, we've worked through the make the plan. We've worked through address the needs of the pet. We've worked through appointment of the caregiver. All those documents need to be put, I would say, in a spiral notebook. Not a spiral notebook, but a loose leaf notebook, or some sort of book that you can hand to someone. which means you have to make more than one copy. So publishing means going to Kinko's or going to FedEx or going to Staples and maybe having a book put together. I always say, make it a book that you can slip pages in and out of, because you want to be able to update as you need it. If you make it bound, that's great, but then when you have to change because the care of a pet changes, the appointed person to care for your pet changes, your attorney changes, your vet changes, your situation changes, you have to have the whole thing rebound. This way, you can just slip the page out, slip the page in. And when you're publishing it, make sure it has natural breaks. Now, that might not be intuitive. You just write, and you're writing, and you're writing. Look at what you're writing and say, if I had to change this, would I have to retype the whole thing? Which now with computers is not a big deal. But would I throw out a whole page when I only need to throw out a line? Is there something I could do that would make it easier? So look at what you're producing and make it update easy, as I say, because you really want to make sure that you have the most updated information in the best chronological order so that people will know exactly what it is you want them to do. And publishing this book is by far, even though it's the fourth step, the most important step, because you've taken the time to make a plan. You've taken the time to address all the needs of your pet, and you've taken the time to call people and ask them if they would agree to take your pets, if in fact you can't care for them. If you don't publish it, all of that really hard work, determination, and planning is for naught, because nobody will ever find it. And I tell you a story about a woman who did take my MAAP plan and did make the plan, appoint the caregivers, and address the needs of her pet. But she never published it. She knew about publishing it because she was part of the program, and publishing has been part of the program since the outset. But she decided she would, and maybe she did tell her husband, but in the throes of losing your wife unexpectedly, he might have forgotten. She didn't tell anybody else. She didn't give anybody else a copy. The only copy was in a drawer in her kitchen file cabinet, like we all have those little desks sometimes in our kitchens or in our offices or in our bedrooms where we keep all our important papers, AKC papers, medical papers for ourselves and our pets and our children. That drawer. It was in that drawer. And you didn't see it, and it wasn't labeled boldly. I am so into bold labeling, you have no idea. I love to get white binders, and I love to write in red on the spine of the binder what this is. This is my MAAP plan for my pet. So people know that they need to, in case of emergency, break the seal. In case of emergency, pull this file. Really important. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that when you do this, you have a copy of it in a file where someone knows where to get it. Your husband, your children, your caregivers, the people who are going to come in and take care of your dogs. They have to know where it is. The other thing that is incredibly important, and we are currently looking for this sticker so you can put it on your refrigerator. We want one of those, and if you know where to find one, email me, text me, let me know. I'd love a paw print, a big paw print, that is one of those plastic adhesives. Not that it adheres to your refrigerator, but it's static that adheres it to your refrigerator. We're looking for one of those because we want you to do the ultimate publication, which is my pets have plans, call this person. Because if you, God forbid, trip, fall, faint, heart attack. Hi, welcome. Hi. Hey, Connie, how are you?
Sorry I'm late, Deborah.
No worries. No worries. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks so much. We're just talking about publishing, as you know, so that's what you can watch the beginning 15 minutes, and then this is going to go on from there. So what I was talking about is finding that wonderful adhesive, but not adhesive, it's static electricity for our note on the refrigerator that says, I've made a plan for my pets, call this person. Because when you faint or fall down or have a heart attack or, you're somewhere, knowing that you have this information readily available to the EMTs who come to pick you up off the floor, is key, because they will only call animal care and control. That's all they'll do. They'll call animal care and control. They will not look for anything that isn't apparent. So what I'm hoping to do is find for all my Blueprint graduates this adhesive to put on your refrigerator and to put on your front door and your back door, so that if people come through because you need them, they know where your pets are. So this is one of the most important pieces of publication you can do, because unless the emergency service, police, animal welfare know you have someone right there ready, willing, and able to take your pets and can be reached, you don't have any ability to stop them from taking your pets. And you always want to at least include 2 numbers, because God forbid the one person who is your main contact, maybe your neighbor next door, whatever, they aren't home, they're not answering their phone. I mean, how many of us get to a place where the post office, we're in the post office, they don't like you to pick up the phone, they don't like you to have the phone ring, so you put it on silent, you stick it in your purse, you don't hear it, you don't pay attention to it for an hour, and then you realize, oh my God, I was contacted by, the Humane Society because the EMTs contacted them and I was the number that was supposed to take care of the pets. So what you want to do is you always want to leave at least 2 numbers on that little piece of paper, on your refrigerator, on your back door. As I said, I'm looking for that adhesive paw so that they know you've made a plan. And actually, it's really interesting. A colleague of mine, actually a client of mine, said to me, and you need to put one in the refrigerator too. One of your MAAP plans, you have to put it in the refrigerator, because if there's fire, that will be the only place that those documents remain. And although we probably will take our file with us if the fires are coming down the hills, that might be a good place in case you lose it to have a backup. I'm never one, you store it in a plastic bag, I'm never one to say, oh, that's silly, let's not do that. Makes sense to me. I always want to have this, an air and a spare, so to speak. So you're taking your spiral notebook with you, not your spiral notebook, your loose leaf binder with you with all the information you have on your pets, and you have one in a Ziploc bag. Probably you'll just have the innards of your binder in a Ziploc bag so that you have it in case a fire comes. I mean, we've had in the last few weeks here in the United States and outside the United States a clear and present understanding of the dangers that can happen in a split second. And unless you make a plan, and unless you publish that plan so people can follow through, you are really, and you can follow through. We spoke before about the fact that you not only need assistance in your neighborhood, so if there's an emergency that you got to get the dogs out, the cats out, the horses out, not only do you want to have someone living next door, living down the block, living a mile, 5 miles away. In these incidences, it really drove home the need for someone who is a state away or 2 counties away. Because if the natural disaster, man-made disaster, whatever, takes up your whole entire county or maybe your whole entire state, you want to be able to know that you can go to a neighboring state and find someone who can help you. Now, for people who have dog show dogs and show dogs in agility or in rally or in conformation or obedience or field, we're blessed. We have people who come from all over the country to participate in these events. And now with the addition of ILP dogs, which means the dog that you rescue, that you want to do AKC eventing with, you also have the most important piece of the puzzle, which is a lot of people around you within a 5-hour driving distance who you can ask, will you take me and my kitties in if something happens? The trouble rests on whether or not, if you breed, the puppies you place have this kind of a plan. Are they thinking you're going to be the person who's going to take the pet back? You might be one of the people who is appointed as one of the caregivers. You might be required to be one of the people who's appointed as a caregiver. I know for me, I am the first person there to call if they need to take care of their pet, or they need to place their pet, or they need to do something. I'm supposed to be the first person. Now, I live sometimes hours away from my puppies. And so if they have a neighbor, that's fine too. And that person is also, because we publish it, knows about me, knows about the fact that they have to keep in touch with me, so that they know that if they run out of time or ability to care for a dog, they call me. It's redundancy. We talked about that when we appointed our caregivers. It's about the redundancy you need. But after these past few weeks, it's not only about the redundancy, but the geographical positioning of the redundancy. So you might have 3 people who are nearby who can step in and fill in for you. You might have 1 or 2 people who are down the road a piece, so to speak, so that you can not only have them care for your dogs, but maybe even have them care for you in the event of an evacuation that's called in your town. It is without a doubt the most frightening thing to shelter in place with pets. The people who have taken my MAAP blueprint plan before all called and thanked me when the various events happened in the last 3 weeks, because they knew that to shelter in place with their pets was likely the most dangerous thing they could do, not necessarily for themselves, but for their pets. Because if you watched any of the TV coverage, boat after boat after boat had either dogs or cats in it, and they were all soaking wet, and all of those germs and all of that mush that they were in, you know, in the recent hurricanes, some dogs were tied up so that they wouldn't, I guess, mess up the house and drown because they couldn't get away from the high water. It is really imperative to us as pet caregivers and pet lovers, and, you know, having family members who are furry, that we recognize that although we might be able to shelter in place, our pets should never shelter in place unless you have the ability to get them up above whatever catastrophe might be coming. If it's fire, they're not going to be able to shelter in place. You need to find a place to take them. And that might be a shelter. That might be an emergency shelter that's set up. Don't poo-poo it. It might be the only thing you can do in the amount of time you have if you haven't made sufficient connections in different states that you can move to. I know that I was on a listserv that was having a great number of conversations over the recent fires and floods and hurricanes, and they all said, well, you know I could go here and I know I could go there, and I'm just, you know, my pets go with me, and thank God. But to make a plan and publish it and have people know you're coming is really much more sane than when the weather system tells you you've got to get out, trying to scramble and find the person. My blueprint participants all called and said, I knew where I was going. They knew I was coming. They knew how many dogs I was bringing because I published my plan with them, so they had it in their hands. They knew what kind of food to get, so I only had to bring the food that was in my house. I didn't need to stop and get new because they didn't have a rush on food. They didn't have a rush on water. And it made for a really, really civilized transition. So when you make all of these plans, if you don't publish and you don't set out to find and make sure the people you know what it is you'd like to do, which is the publication, you have to publish it in order for them to know, you're really setting yourself up to fail. So beside the publicizing with your attorney and with your veterinarian and with your caregivers, you also might want to publish it with people who may not be your caregivers, but who may be able to take care of getting the pets to your caregivers. That's really important as well. So if you have transition people who are getting the animals from point A to point B, let them know as well. The more people you let know, the better off your pets are in the long run when something occurs. So now I've been speaking for at least 25 minutes, and I'd love to know if anyone has any questions. I hope I can see the box at some point because, as I said at the beginning, my large computer decided to ask me for a password, which unfortunately I couldn't find. And so I'm on my cell phone, which thankfully saves passwords. So if anybody has any questions with publishing or any questions in general, it's really great to ask them now. Let me know.
Deborah, this is Connie. You raise a really good point about emergency provisions and planning between breeders and owners, whether they're, show homes or whether they're pet homes. And certainly I always, as any reputable breeder, have contracts with my puppy owners. And you raise a really important point about having emergency provisions in the contracts. I have, the standard clause that all responsible breeders have, that in the event you cannot care for your dog at any point in the dog's life, it is to revert to me. But given that we're in California and there are 78 wildfires currently raging in the West, which are horrific, and that's a case of sometimes you have to get out in 5 minutes. The fact that we need to emphasize in our contracts, and this is something for pet owners to insist upon with their breeders as well. If we have emergency provisions that in the event you have to get out fast, you come to me with your dog, and then you can go wherever you need to go, because as you know, not every place will take dogs. And
absolutely. And you'd think it would be intuitive, but it's not. And quite frankly, you bring up a great process that a breeder could go through. So not only is it about, if something happens, I'll take your dog back, but here, let me educate you on what you need to do as a pet owner in order to keep you and your pet safe so you don't leave it behind. Because the last thing you want to hear is that they evacuated and left the dog behind.
Absolutely. I mean, that would kill me, and I'm sure it would kill anybody who cares about a dog, but especially a puppy that you have had from literally the first time it drew its breath,
yep.
And nurtured until it went to its new home. That would absolutely kill me. I know that for a fact. So that's a really important point. Another point I wanted to bring up is that if you have a purebred dog, even if it's a pet and is a couch potato and only watches Major League Baseball with you on the weekends, you most generally have a local and certainly a national breed club available at your disposal, and they all have rescue teams. And I have chaired rescue for my local club, and in fact in my MAAP, both my local club and my national club's rescue teams are the third and the fourth down the line after my best friend and my sister who lives in the Bay Area. So I cannot emphasize enough to contact your rescue teams, and even your local all breed kennel club may have a rescue team, but it's more likely to be your breed club. And let them know what you're doing, and they're there, and we do pet assists all the time.
Connie, you bring up two really important points, which is, as breeders, we should know that we may not be able to take our dogs back if the dog lives nearby and we're all under evacuation. So to encourage our pet owners to make a MAAP plan, be part of this group of conscientious pet owners, because it's not just about breeders making these plans. It's funny when I speak to breeder clubs, they all say, listen, I've got it down because I'm a member of a breed club. And so there are 20 people. I can pick up the membership directory and go to Georgia, go to New York, go to Oregon, wherever you're going to go. And that's the blessing of being part of a breed club. However, don't rely on that. You really need to make a MAAP plan yourself, but they are some of the hardest people to convince. You are one of the most brilliant, because it wasn't hard to convince you that this was an important piece of information you needed to put together. But I sometimes am able to get them to recognize that if in fact a catastrophe happens and they have 7 dogs within a 10-mile radius of their home and everyone asks for them to take it back, are they able? unlikely, especially if they have to evacuate as well. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that if you don't want to do it yourself as a breeder because you know everybody and you don't need it, I'm not going to convince people to do something they don't believe in, which is fine. Have your pet owners do it. So there you are. You're the first line, Connie, of where they're going to drop off the dog if, in fact, the fire is coming to their house, or if they've, live in the Northeast, or there's snow, or they live in the Southeast and there's hurricanes, whatever it is. You've already made it a priority for you in your puppy packet to alert them to make a MAAP plan. Because not only in the contract do you get the dog back, but in a catastrophe you get the dog back. And if in fact you can't get the dog back, I spoke about this earlier, it would be great if you knew of the 5 people they knew of who would take the dog.
Well, and that is absolutely key. I'll give you an example. Of course, we had, after 5 years of drought, we had a very, very rainy winter all over the state here in California. And one of my pups that was born 3 years ago is in San Jose. And part of San Jose had terrible, terrible mudslides. So
right.
I contacted Bridget's mom and immediately and said, "Are you all okay?" And she said, "Yes, we are." Had they had to evacuate, I have friends all over the Bay Area, Wheaton friends, who could have taken the dog until I could get up there and get to it. So it's really important to have a network.
It really is, and to put that network on paper, because quite frankly, that owner doesn't know of the network that you have. And if you sat down with them and said, okay, I want you to make a MAAP plan, tell me the 5 people who might take your dog, and then say, and listen, if those 5 people know where I am, so that if they just transport the dog, that's great. Or if you don't have 5 people, then you should let me know and I will gain 5 people. When people say to me, I don't know anybody, Deborah, I go, I tell you, if you have a purebred dog and you bought it from a responsible breeder, they're going to have at least 2 people in your neighborhood or within reasonable driving, which to me is like 5 hours if there's an emergency.
Right, right.
That you can take the dog to if you need to evacuate. And this is the kind of information the MAAP plan brings to the surface. So you're not thinking about it. And instead of thinking about it when the wind blows the wrong way and you're like, as you said, 5 minutes to leave, think about it now, because it quite frankly is so important to put that down on a piece of paper that you can keep and publish so that your veterinarian knows, that if the dog goes back to the breeder, this is the breeder's name, this is the breeder's vet's name, this is the information that I'd love for you to share, because he has permission. He's got your permission to share because you have thought ahead and said, listen, this is the file I'd like you to put in my file. It's not too big. It's just a bunch of people. And when you bring all these puppies to your vet when they're young, to be able to know that in the event you get the puppies back, that your vet will be able to talk to their vet if they need help, or if they're, they need some assistance, or they need some health checks or whatever it is. You've got everything already in place. It is really incredibly important. And you're absolutely right. We all have this, and as I said, breeders are some of my hardest people to convince because they know it, and they know they have it in place, and they know they have that membership book. But quite frankly, when the evacuations occur, you don't have a lot of time to go through the membership book, and you don't know if they're going to be there. And if you set this up before, they know that if something happens, because, maybe they live in Colorado and the fire isn't by them, but they look and see, oh, I have 3 friends in San Jose who are surrounded by fires. I'm going to pick up the phone. We've already had this conversation. I'm going to say, listen, leave yourself enough time to get here so that you're safe, but the door is open. It's very important. And if you don't need to leave because the fire is not near you, you can then, as a breeder, say, well, my owner made a MAAP plan, and one of the people on their MAAP plan is me, and I'd love for them to be able to maybe go to you because they're closer to the fire. And you know what? That works. That works as well. And the other point you made, Connie, which was huge, and I usually speak about it, and I likely did, but maybe not, during, appoint caregivers. The remainder man in your appointed caregivers, you could have 10 appointed caregivers. That's wonderful. But you always have to have the person that's a step above the local kill shelter, because if you don't, then if everybody refuses the care of your pet's going to go to that local kill shelter because that's what's going to happen. So what you want to do is, as you said perfectly, if you have a purebred dog, every single AKC purebred national club supports rescue. They support it locally. It may be in your own state. It may be in the next state over. It may be in the next town over. But every single purebred national club either supports, operates, reviews the care of specifically, I want to say this correctly, so specifically funded purebred rescue under the guise of the National Club. Now, that being said, there are rescues out there that know that they will get more traction if they are a rescue of a certain breed, but are not affiliated with the National Club. So in their mind, it really is important to go down to the puppy mills, pull out all the Cocker Spaniels, bring them up, and place them. Now, that is not necessarily the best rescue to buy from for two reasons. One is you're not dealing with someone who knows the breed type and knows where the dog should be and knows how to care for the dogs. And second, they are in it for the money. The breed rescues that are supported by the national clubs are funded by the national clubs to a large degree. They do their own fundraising sometimes, raffles at different dog shows, but they are funded by the national club, which means that they're in no hurry to turn over dogs because they want to make sure that those dogs are placed in the right place. A great example of this is I just spoke to a client who was thinking of being part of the MAAP blueprint, and she has since joined. She couldn't make this call, but she said, it was interesting to me when I applied for a rescue dog that they interviewed me through the National Club. It was a rescue in Maryland through a national club. She said they interviewed me and asked me all sorts of questions and told me all about the interesting things I would experience adopting a American Eskimo dog. She said because they have different quirks, sort of like your Wheatons have, my Irish Setters have. I always tell people up front, this is not the dog for everyone, and it doesn't mean you're not a wonderful home, but this might not be the dog for you. And so these are the things you have to understand come with the package when you buy it. And she said that because the rescue is affiliated with the National Club, they were more interested in whether or not this dog would fit in her family than turning the dog over and making the money, which is what you really want to place your dog in if, in fact, all your caregivers can't take your dog, and at the last, minute, you're going to go to Wheaton Rescue, to Irish Setter Rescue, you're going to go to American Eskimo Dog Rescue. Those people are going to know how to evaluate your dogs. They're going to have your MAAP plan, so they're going to have the description and the addressing of all the needs of your dogs, but they're boots on the ground to understand those dogs. So this is such an important piece of information that you shared, in that if you feel you want to get a Wheaton and you're a passionate rescue person, you want to take a dog that needs a home, you know that there are so many shelters that have animals, fabulous. Go to the American Wheaton Terrier Club of America and see where their rescue is in your neighborhood or your neck of the woods. It might be in your state, it might be nearby in an adjacent state, whatever. Go there, see what they have, because they're going to place you with the correct Wheaton for your family if they have any, and you might have to wait. I think that's the biggest thing, and I know, Connie, you probably will bear this out as well. You get calls all the time. Do you have any puppies? I don't have any puppies. And so then they go to the internet, where, of course, there are always puppies, and they take a dog from someone who purports to be a breeder, yet they never visit, and they take all the pictures and the communication as gospel, and maybe it is. I'm not casting aspersions on anyone. However, if you don't go look and see and meet the breeder, you really are taking it on faith, and you might not be getting the package you're buying. So if, in fact, you have an animal and you want to make a plan for it, make sure you work with the national rescues because they know about your dog. And if you're looking for a pet, look to the National Rescues as well if you want to get a dog that needs a home, or look to the national clubs to find a breeder in your area that is going to support you for the life of your pet. So thank you, Connie, because all of that information is so key. It is so imperative. And as I say to most breeders, I get it. You think you're okay, and I'm not going to talk you out of it. But think about all the puppies that you might have placed around the country. And maybe those people would appreciate being told you might want to make a MAAP plan. Because that way, not only does it support your contract, where it says you get the dog back, you then are in this published document that is in this person's home that her husband, his wife, their children will know who to call to get these pets to in the event of an emergency. So that was great. I love having conversations. Anyone else have any questions? I know we have a few people on. I just want to make sure everyone gets a chance to have a chat. Anyone? Any more questions, Connie? Are you doing well on the publishing? Have you put the, I said earlier before I think you got on that I always talk about getting a binder that you can slip pages in and out of so that you can update the animals every year.
Actually, pardon me, actually I have a folder. Don't have a binder, but a binder works fine. I also, in fact, the platform I'm talking with you is a Surface Pro, which is very light. And in fact, my overall emergency plan for getting out of the house is to grab it first because my life is on it. And I always had electronic copies of everything because I'm really into IT. So at any rate, I've got both paper copies and electronic copies of all of this.
Well, I'm so glad you said that because it is so important to take it with you as you walk out the door. That's the easiest way in your electronics. If you have no internet, you have to make sure you save it to a place where you can get it without internet.
Right, it's on my hard drive.
Yeah, you have to save it on your hard drive. But recognize, is your Surface Pro password protected?
Yes, absolutely.
So when the EMTs come, unless you put your password on the refrigerator for them to go and get the information out of it, they won't know what to do with your pets. So I always say, I get it. I love IT too. I don't know how much of my office you can see, but I'm buried in paper because I save everything in files on my computer, but I also am a tactile person. I need to feel it. But for this one thing, having a paper binder that someone else can access is key, because God forbid something happened to you, or that there is no access to the electronic copy because your dog who's 8 months old hits his head on the tabletop, splashes water into your computer and destroys the hard drive, which is what happened to me this week. And so I have nothing that's on my, I was able to back it up. It was backed up, so I have it on backup. But had I not had it on backup, everything would have been gone. And in any event, I don't have my laptop, which is why I'm on my phone. So when my big computer said, no, you can't get in because you have to know the password, and of course I didn't know the password because that's not one of my magnificence. I have a piece of paper here with all the passwords. It's in a safe place, and I have no idea where that is. But in any event, if in fact you have everything electronically, that is fabulous for grab and go. Not so good if, God forbid, you're not able to get access because you're the one who's sick. You're the one who's, being taken out in the ambulance. You're the one who was involved in a car accident and, the dogs need to go somewhere. It is really important to be low-tech with the MAAP plan, which is why I send so many templates, because being low-tech with the MAAP plan will save your pet's life and actually enable your husband, your children, your neighbors, your breeder, whomever, to get access to the information you want them to get. So if your puppy owner puts everything on their tablet and something happens to them, there's nobody who knows. And that's what happened to this woman. you know, she never published it. She had a hard copy, but she never told anybody what it was. And so someone came in and placed all of her co-owned dogs, every single one. Every single one was placed. And when they asked the person who placed the dogs where the dogs were, she said they're in great homes, and since I'm not a party to the contract, I'm not telling you because they're in great homes, and I'm not going to disturb them now because, you know, you want to get them back for breeding purposes, which is clearly never why we want to get our dogs back. But, you know, lay people sometimes think, you know, we're only in it for the money, and that's not the case. So although I applaud the electronics, I would suggest strongly and gently that we get a, you know, a low-tech binder at Staples and print out every piece of paper and put it somewhere that people know where it is. So on that, so I was talking when you came on, Connie, low battery. I was talking when you came on that I'm trying to find, did I lose you guys? I'm sorry. It said low battery, so I was like, oh my God. The static sticker I want to put on everybody's refrigerator would not only have the 2 numbers of the person you call in the event they're needed, but also the directions to where this hard copy of your MAAP plan is, because it is incredibly important to help people help your pets in the way you want them to be taken care of. So any more questions? I know Rose is also on the phone, and I just want to make sure I give everybody a chance to ask any questions, give any feedback, because I am always in feedback. I said earlier today it was phenomenal that I got some feedback from several of you that there were templates that I mentioned in the videos that were inadvertently not put into each of the segments. So go back to your segments and make sure that you double check, because there will be new and better templates every time. And I also said at the beginning, which I'm going to wrap up because it's about 45 minutes, and unless Connie has more questions, which I hope she does, I will let you all go, because this is really, you know, a hard time to meet, but I'm so glad you're all here. It really warms my heart, especially given the last 2 or 3 weeks of weather and fire, and it just, the people who had made the MAAP plan told me they were thrilled because they knew what they were going to do. But the people who have been part of this MAAP plan will have access to this information ad infinitum. That's my gift to all of you for 2017. And this program is going to change, so you're going to want to come back to it over and over again. A friend of mine, Norva, when I put this program together, said you should do the MAPS plan. I said, it doesn't roll off your tongue very well. She goes, yes, but you have to schedule a review every year. And I said, you know, you're absolutely right. So the 5th meeting that we have is a wrap-up meeting, is to talk about any questions anyone has. And if you text them to me or you email them to me, I will put them in the video so everybody benefits from your question. But the S is about scheduling that review. And what you have access to now is the review that will come every single 6-week session, so that you can come back and learn the new things, what's new, what's been put into the program, what you might want to add to your MAAP plan, because this is an ever-evolving program. As Connie pointed out, you know, there are breed clubs that have rescues that you can take advantage of. There will also be groups that come upon us that provide long-term care for our pets that, because they're so important to us, we now have hospice for pets. We now have veterinary schools. One comes to mind immediately, Texas A&M, that was given a grant by someone to provide housing for pets. It's sort of like their parents buy a spot for them. And if, in fact, they don't outlive their pet goes and spends the rest of its life there living in a house with other pets, with the veterinarian trainees, the veterinarian students. So what better could there be? But, you know, and they're not used as subjects. They are used as, you know, emotional support animals, likely, for all the stress that comes from going to vet school. So we're going to expand this program every single time it's put on. It's going to be a rotating program. So if you missed one, or if you're just starting, the next one will come. This is going to go over and over and over again. It's always going to be me live for at least 60 minutes because I want to make sure people can have their questions answered and I can address things of the minute that are happening that help you understand why it is you're here, why it is you're making this plan. I know it's not easy, and I know it's, not necessarily fun to have to pick up the phone and call your trust and estate attorney and say, listen, this is the plan I've made for my pets. I'm going to send you a copy, and I want you to put it in my file. I don't want it to be part of my will, because if it's part of my will and I want to update it, I have to pay you to update my will. We don't want to do that. I'm actually now, so if you have any attorneys you want to recommend me speak with, feel free, because I am now doing lunch and learns all over the country for some of the top trust and estate firms in the country, because they want to know how to help their clients take care of their pets, but they don't want to do this legwork that we do every 21 days on making sure we've gotten the plan put together, making that all-important plan, addressing all the needs of our pets, appointing all the caregivers. They don't want to get involved with that. That's not part of what they want to do. They just want to implement. But if you have nothing to implement except call my husband, that might not work really well for you. It didn't work for that woman who had her dogs who were co-owned placed by a neighbor. Didn't work for her. Her husband had no idea that she'd made this plan. She didn't publish it. So it's really, really important. You might think publishing is, oh, well, I'll just tell my husband. Not enough. We need to make sure that we keep it current, keep it out there, get in touch with our puppy owners and make sure they do the same thing, because it's an incredibly inexpensive program to take part in, and it's going to remain as inexpensive as I can make it every single time it renews, because I want to make sure, this is my mission in life, that people take care of their pets more than word of mouth. It just doesn't. It was funny. I was at my breed club over the weekend, and we were talking about all of the happenstances that were happening all over the country with weather and fire and water. And they all laughed. They're like, oh, God, you're like a broken record. I go, yes, I am. And how many of you have a plan? And no one raised their hand. And that's my own breed, because they do truly believe someone will come in and help them. And I'm here to tell you that they will if they can, but if they're in the same boat you're in, they won't be able to. So, wrapping up publication, make sure that when you appoint caregivers, you appoint them near and far. It's okay to have 10 caregivers. It's okay to say, listen, I have a friend in Colorado, I have a friend in Chicago, I have a friend in Atlanta, and those are the people who are going to take my pets if, in fact, the people who are right here, boots on the ground near my kennel, can't help. Because you know what? That is going to give your pets their one-way ticket out of a shelter. They are not going to go to a shelter if you have a plan. They are going to a shelter. I kid you not. They are going to a shelter if you make it minutely difficult for anyone to find out your plan on care for your pets, because the police aren't going to look for it, the EMTs aren't going to look for it, animal care and control aren't going to look for it. They're not going to take the time to look for your plan. You need it on the window. It needs to be published on the window of your home, on the window of your door, on your refrigerator. As I said, I am looking for these things. I'm on a mission, and all of you in the Blueprint program are going to get them when I find them, but they are those static paws that you put your number on, you put your next person's number on, and you tell them where that plan is. There is a plan on the counter in the kitchen. Open it up, everybody's number's there. If you can't get me, if you can't get the second number, this is what you need to do. The plan is there, because you don't want your pets to go to a shelter for one more minute than they absolutely have to. If the fire's coming down the hill and they're taking all the pets because you're not home, you're going to be grateful that they threw them in the back of a truck and took them to a shelter. But if, in fact, there is time in which to implement your plan, you want to be able to make that easy for them to do. Very important, which is why publication is key. And in the advanced courses that I give, I often talk about making sure you invite the firemen and the policemen over if you can, if that's appropriate. Sometimes it isn't. Most times it is, even if you do it off their hours. Have a chili dinner and show them how to take your pets out of the house and show them where the pets can go if, in fact, there's a fire in your home. And show them where all of your important emergency information is for your pets so they know. At least one of them knows. Maybe a few of them know. The more you publish your plan for your pet with the people who are going to be your first responders, the more likely your pets are going to end up where you want them to be. So I'm coming to the end of an hour. I want to make sure that I've answered everyone's questions. Connie, any more questions come up to you? Because you are like my star student. You have so many great questions.
Thank you so much, Deborah. I cannot thank you enough for this whole process. But I just want to share with you that when my husband and I were starting to update our estate planning, which we're still in the throes of doing, and I first mentioned to the attorney that I wanted to make a pet trust. He said, gee, I've never done that. He has as much gray hair as I do, and his wife has horses. And they live right up the hill from us. So I said, and you have horses and you haven't done anything. So that, I mean, I'm sure you encounter this all the time. But
all the time. You know what? Give him my number. It's not like I'm going to tell him shame on you. It's going to be let me help. Let me help. Because you know what? That's what all the firms are doing, Connie, now. They are hiring me to be their pet person because people have pets. And people either don't ask for a pet trust and would if they knew about it, so that's more money for him to make, or he doesn't know how to do it, so he doesn't offer it. Well, I do know how to do it, and I do know how to do it in a way that it's easy for him, and he actually has his clients keep evolving so that he can recheck as well. So it's a win-win situation. So if you have any, want to introduce us, feel free, because it's about collaborating. I don't know how many times I say this, but I do this for free. If I could and I could keep my doors open, I'd really do it for free. But I do it for such low cost because it really is important to me to educate my trust and estate colleagues who don't know that this even exists.
Well, I cannot thank you enough. And what I'm going to do in my own National Breed Club, in fact, we have our specialty, the Montgomery County Kennel Club, every year outside of Philly. I'm going to suggest to them that they bring you in for an educational seminar.
Well, somebody beat you to it, I think. A terrier group beat you to it. I think I'm coming in for Lakelands. So I'm going to be there in 2018. So all of you should come to the program. Support the Lakeland Terriers if they let you in. If not, then, be happy to do it on an alternate day because it is just so important.
Fantastic. I will let everybody know for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And, they can, whoops, I'm gone. They can be part of this program as well without even having me come, and then they can, learn how to do this. But if you want me to come in, and I go to California a great deal, and I don't know if you're in Southern or Northern California, but I'm
in the LA area.
Okay, so I'm affiliated with UC Davis. So I've taught a lot of their vets how to resolve conflict.
Wonderful.
So my travel schedule can always coincide if we can make it work with a conference that I'm speaking at. That's what I do. I'm going to Colorado next year because I'm going to speak at a conference for the AVMA. And so I'm probably going to stay for 3 extra days to speak to a group of dog trainers about conflict and then speak to their people about conflict and making the MAAP plan. Because what this plan does, and the only reason it's under my umbrella, is because it addresses a conflict that can arise. And I'm all about addressing it before it gets out of hand. And that's why this plan is here, because you don't want to, I always say to my trust and estate colleagues, it's tantamount to malpractice if you don't ask your client if they have a pet. I said, because they really need to know what they need to do to care for their pet. And they might tell you, I don't give a crap about the pet. Wherever the pet goes, but at least you've covered yourself. But if you don't ask your client about whether or not they have pets, you really are not giving them full service, because pets now are not just animals and property. They are family members and companions. And as such, knowing how to take care of them and then making the plan that really creates that end game is most important. Thank you, Connie. I appreciate it. And let him know where I am. He can go to my website, because, you know, this is part of what I do. And believe me, most of the people who are, well, breeders are very reticent to do this. Not you. You're one of the stars. But horse owners are truly incredibly difficult. And you know who's the top of the heap? Parrot owners. Now, horses live about 40 years. Dogs and cats don't. Birds live about 60 years. And if you don't make a plan for them, for sure, they are going to end up somewhere you don't want them to be. So that's why this plan isn't just for, you know, we who have dogs and cats and love them, but for the people who have horses, because otherwise, you know, go on the internet. There are so many horse rescues. You can't even see straight, and it's mostly because the owner didn't plan or the owner died. And it just, you know, makes me cringe, because it's hard to find a home for a 1,200-pound animal.
Yes, it is. In fact, our daughters and granddaughters have horses up in Northern California, so we have them in the family.
Yep, so make sure that they sit down and make the plan and have the stickers and do all the things that you're doing for your dogs, for their horses, because quite frankly, it is even more imperative. I spoke to a group in Oregon who lived in a cul-de-sac, so there were about 7 homes, and they invited me in to have this conversation. And the day after I left, they all wrote me and took pictures of the additional hitches they put on their non-towing cars, because everyone knew everyone else's horse, but they only had a 2-horse trailer. And so they had their car that towed their trailer, and then they had their Prius. And they're like, but I can't really tow a horse with a Prius. And I go, well, you can tow it out of harm's way if the fire's coming down the hill, right? And they go, well, yeah. And I go, so put a hitch on. And so every single one of them put hitches on, and some of them even traded in their Prius for a little bit bigger car that would at least allow them to drive a few, you know, a few miles, 10, 15, 20 miles, pulling a trailer. It's an amazing thing to enable people to really think about putting into place what's going to save their beloved animals. So this is Deborah Voivoda Hamilton. You've been listening to the MAAP Blueprint Plan for the letter P, publish. It is so imperative. I'm so grateful all of you are here. I'm so grateful you're making the MAAP plan. You will be part of this program if you've joined in 2017 forever, because I am going to gift everyone who's a member in 2017 to be part of it forever. And believe me, this program is growing and growing and growing, and going to get even more informative, and you'll want to come back and take it a few times to make sure your plan is perfect. So this is Deborah Voivoda Hamilton. You can reach me at hamiltonlawmediation.com. You can write me at dhamilton@hamiltonlawmediation.com. I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks when you've finished your Ps, or if you're not even up to P, come anyway, because that's the wrap-up session where we talk about the importance of scheduling reviews of all the information you've created, because the people change, your desired care changes for these animals, and these animals' needs change. And so until I see you, I hope you have safe and wonderful experiences with your animals. Thank you, Connie. Thank you, Rose. Thank you, everyone who's on that I can't see because of my phone, and I apologize. Be careful, stay safe, and give everybody in your house that has 4 legs a kiss from me. Take care.
Thank you, Deborah.